pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers fly!
Flight outside FP off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks. Mic check. Let me know if you can hear me this fine Saturday morning, evening, or good night, wherever you are. I've got some chat open over here, and let me know if the audio and videos are videoing and audioing in the way that they're supposed to be. We're back with another NSF Live NASA Spaceflight's weekly news show where we talk about news. It was right there. I said it at the beginning, news, when it comes to space and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of stuff to go over today. We're going to be doing some live Q&A as we always do. And then I've got some other nerds with me up above me here today. Let's start off there, shall we? Thomas Burghardt, welcome to NSF Live. Not your first rodeo. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Das. Wow, great start. Excited to be back.
Alrighty, right here, folks, right above me, Thomas Burghardt, writer extraordinaire, live stream host, the whole kit and caboodle with NASA Spaceflight. Also up at the top of the stack, we've got Jack Beyer. Jack, how are you doing this fine Saturday?
Good, I'm doing great. It's Saturday, so it's a good day.
All right, cool. In chat, y'all let me know. Were you able to hear Jack and Thomas just fine? Again, I'm over here pulling levers and pulleys and all sorts of blinking lights. So if you need me to turn somebody up or down a little bit, let me know. Again, you're part of our remote production crew when you tune into these things. And if there's anything we can do to make the broadcast a little bit better, let us know, because I'm like the guy who has to click on the things. So without further ado, we're going to start talking about some things today. But with further ado, actually, I forgot my other little spiel. Remember, as we go over the course of the broadcast today, this is a live broadcast. So we are here, we're reading chat, we're answering questions, we're doing all these different things. As we go through each segment that we talk about, we've got some example segments over on the side. We will take a couple questions for each at the end of each segment. So when we start talking about James Webb Space Telescope, if you have any questions about James Webb Space Telescope, put them into chat. If you start your chat with @NASASpaceflight, mention us like you do on YouTube. Mention @NASASpaceflight. That'll put it into a nice little question queue, and then we'll pick a couple of questions and answer them at the end of each topic, as long as I remember. Scream at me if I don't, because I have to remember to do that. Also, we may not get to all the questions in real time. At the end of the episode, we have something that we call Max Q&A, and all the questions that we couldn't get to over the course of the show, we'll try to squeeze those in at the end. But it is live. It's interactive, and we want you to be able to ask questions, make comments, participate in chat, and all that sort of stuff. Also, other thing, we're able to make these things happen because of y'all's support. So things like super chats and memberships and yada, yada, yada. Who here saw the Starship stream yesterday? Did anybody see this live stream from Boca Chica? Raise your hands. Anyone? NASA Spaceflight live stream from Boca Chica? The only people in chat who can raise their hands are people who are members, because we did a little special behind the scenes member hangout live from Boca Chica yesterday. We were waiting for some actual tests to happen, and the tests actually never ended up happening, so we never went live on the main channel. But while we were sitting there waiting for the grass to start venting, over in the member Discord, we shared some live stream video and just hung out with people that were supporting the channel, going the extra mile, supporting us as members. So anyways, let's go on with what we're going to talk about today. We've got James Webb Space Telescope, Starship ready to test, China's missions to Mars, and this is a nice embroidered shirt you can get from the store. Who's first on the list here? Let me see. There's other stuff to talk about as well. That would be you, Jack. So whenever you're ready to go, tell us what is going on with this Chinese launch. Something's going on. What's up?
Well, it's something that a fair bit of our listeners might care, I would say, a little bit about. A Mars mission. It is, we're in a Mars transfer window right now, and so there's a bevy of Mars missions going on, and this will be China's first fully fledged Mars
for the launch this morning of the Northrop Grumman Minotaur 4 rocket carrying the payloads for the National Reconnaissance Office.
And so China went kind of back to the drawing board.
Holding. This is an indefinite hold while we work to clear out the path where the rocket
Minotaur.
Yeah, go ahead.
To make sure they're.
I'm not getting Minotaur auto. No, you're not.
Anyways, so this will be China's first fully fledged, I guess, indigenous, if that's the correct word, Mars mission. And it's going to do something interesting. It's going to have an orbiter, a lander, and a rover. So that's kind of fun and unique. It's launching on a Long March 5 rocket, which is their heavy lift rocket. I believe it's the biggest of the Long March family. And I think the current launch date, what is it, the 23rd, or do we not know? Or are we speculating the 23rd?
No earlier than the 23rd.
Net 23rd, thank you. So yeah, China also wants to do a sample return mission in the 2030s. So this is kind of like a tech demonstrator for that. And yeah, I think it's pretty nifty, and it's nice to see another country attempt, Mars missions, because as we all know, or maybe we don't know, Mars is a really complicated place to get to, and a lot of the missions that are attempted to Mars fail. So good luck to China, and good luck to Tianwen-1.
Was that the whole thing on Tianwen-1?
I mean, that's basically what I've got.
I've got like other videos and stuff we haven't rolled yet here. What was this one? Oh, it's the vehicle rolling out. Tell us a little bit about the vehicle rolling out and stuff there, Jack.
I mean, that's a Long March 5 rocket. It's a heavy lift rocket. That's about it. The vehicle's encapsulated on top of it. I don't know.
Oh, here you go. Here's the vehicle encapsulated on top of it. How's this look?
Hey.
Do we usually get live streams for these Chinese launches? Like, is that something that we got to see, or was this just all video stuff?
Oh, well, it hasn't launched yet, but I don't know if we're going to get a live stream. I hope we do. They've been doing more live streams lately, so that'd be really cool if they do stream live. I haven't seen any announcements about them, saying they're going to stream it live, and maybe I've just missed that.
I haven't seen any live stream announcements for this launch yet. They did stream the last launch of the Beidou satellite navigation constellation the other couple weeks ago, and this is another like big milestone mission. So it's the kind of mission that they would consider webcasting, but sometimes they have big missions that they still don't webcast. So it's kind of hit or miss, and we haven't heard anything about a webcast, I don't think. So we got to stay tuned on that. It would be cool to see, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. And y'all, we should have, if there was some sort of echoing or something that was happening, that's not something that we've picked up before here. But Jack, say hi again real quick. Let's just make sure it's good before we proceed.
Hey, can you hear me? I could hear myself for portions of that, and it kind of slightly drove me insane a little bit. But I can't hear myself now, which is great.
Whatever changed, let's see if it's fixed. We'll see what the deal is here. So what is the next topic we're going to talk about here? I think we've got some Russian news about Artemis.
Some more international spaceflight news. Yeah, sure. So this week, ironically, the same week as the 45th anniversary of the Apollo-Soyuz test project, one of the most successful international cooperation spaceflight projects of all time, we had some less cooperative developments between Russia and the United States. For those who do not know, the Russian space agency Roscosmos is headed by a man by the name of Dmitry Rogozin, and he was interviewed for a Russian news outlet in which he had some interesting remarks about international spaceflight and cooperation. I'm going to paraphrase him, but basically he was talking about the Artemis program, NASA's program to return to the moon and establish a permanent base on the lunar surface, among other things. And he basically had to say that this program has become very political and is moving away, quote, from the principles of cooperation and mutual support that have developed in the International Space Station program, which of course Russia has been a major partner in. He eventually concluded his remarks by saying that Russia is not interested in participating in such a project. Up until recently, Russia was considered to be a pretty major part of the Artemis program. They were expected to provide an airlock module down the line for the Gateway lunar station in lunar orbit. But the head of Roscosmos saying that he is not pleased with the political nature of Artemis, so to speak, and is actually less than interested in participating in such a way. He did say that he maintains his friendships with his partners in the United States, including with Jim Bridenstine, who is the administrator of NASA, and that he hopes cooperation will continue and be less affected by the bad political situation which comes from Washington today. That's his quote. Interestingly, in these same remarks in which he is less than interested in cooperating with the United States, they are confident in partnering with China, who of course has a very large space program, including the upcoming Mars launch mission. So our program Artemis, which has been international from the start, you can see on the screen, there are our initial plans for the Gateway to only have 2 modules, both of which will be American, but they want to expand in the future, and you can see that the European Space Agency, JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, are both heavily involved. Also, Canada is developing Canadarm3, which will provide a robotic arm for the Gateway station, so there's another country involved. NASA has also recently brought on some support from the Australian Space Agency, so there are several countries that are already invested in the Artemis program. Europe's also providing the service module for the Orion spacecraft, so there's another addition. So lots of countries are involved in this, and we are expecting Russia and Roscosmos to be one of those. But this week, Rogozin has said that they don't really plan on doing that. So that's an interesting change of policy from the Russians. NASA Administrator Jim Bernstein did respond, pointing out that all of these countries are involved, and this is very much an international project. And the International Space Station project, which of course Russia has been a major part of, has been enabled over the past 20 years because of Russia and their other international partners. It could not have been done without them. So a change in policy from Russia here. In that same interview, on the note of international cooperation, Rogozin was asked about flying Russian cosmonauts on Crew Dragon and other American crew vehicles, to which he is supportive. He wants to fly Russian cosmonauts on American commercial crew vehicles, both SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft and Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. However, he was adamant that we want those vehicles to be fully tested and debugged, he quoted. Before Russian cosmonauts fly on board. You may know that the next flight of SpaceX Crew Dragon, the first operational mission, will have 3 Americans and 1 Japanese astronaut, but no Russians on board. So potentially after that, on the Crew 2 mission or further down the line, we'll see Russian cosmonauts on board. But they want to see those vehicles fully certified and proved out before that happens. Of course, the Demo 2 mission, the final test flight, is still ongoing. We're expecting that to return next month. And Boeing still has test flights to go for the Starliner spacecraft. But Russia still wants to cooperate in that regard down the line. And hopefully, if politics change, of course, in the next couple of years, there's some potential for big political changes in the United States, which could have effects on NASA. Perhaps that would allow Russia to be more comfortable cooperating in the Artemis program. But as of now, Russia is actually not a participant in the Artemis program anymore. Hoping to change, because cooperation is always a good thing. It helps us accomplish more as a worldwide spacefaring civilization. And hopefully Russia changes their mind, but we'll have to wait and see.
Cool. Alrighty. And I'm continuing to resolve some other issues here. Y'all should be able to hear me just fine right now, I hope. Let's pop back over this way. How we doing, chat? Everything still good? Yes? All right, cool. Yeah, they should be able to hear me. What's up next here? Oh, no. Everybody's favorite delayed space telescope is up next. Who rolled and lost on this one? Who's going to talk about what's going on with James Webb Space Telescope? Looks like Jack, you got that one. Jack,
yeah, that one's me.
Talk to us about James Webb here.
Well, this one, everything going on in the world today, it's, I guess, to be expected. James Webb is delayed until October 2021, actually Halloween, which is kind of fun, spooky. Adds an extra little bit of scariness to the flight. But yeah, so another delay for James Webb. It's unfortunate, like it's not what any of us wanted. They're attributing it to COVID-19. And we, it's one of those missions where we want it to go as soon as possible and we want it to be successful, but it keeps getting delayed and it keeps getting delayed. But you want it to go, it'll go when it's right. So it's the kind of thing where we just have to accept the delay and it'll go when it's ready. NASA has said that it should stay on budget. They're not expecting it to go over budget based on the delay. It should stay within that, and they're expecting the October 31st date to hold. They said that they have about 3 months of schedule margin in their schedule currently. So even with this delay and even with COVID, ongoing, hopefully we'll see it launch on schedule with no further delays from French Guiana on top of an Ariane 5 on Halloween of 2021. And I know I'm trying not to, throw such a bummer on the broadcast here, like just putting water on the fire, but it's the kind of thing where it's a bummer. It's undeniably, we wanted to see a launch, but the good news is that they're taking their time to do everything right. And all the previous delays that they had, I think the previous one before this was due to some tears in the heat shield. All the previous delays were for actual issues with the telescope, and this one, thankfully, is with, I guess it's weird to say, it's not thankfully, but this one is due to external factors, not with an issue with the telescope or an issue with their processes or what have you. So yeah, so that's about it with James Webb. I think unless you have anything else to add, Thomas, that's I think that's where we're at.
I'll just add that, this telescope is very often compared with the Hubble Space Telescope, which, as everyone knows, was serviced on multiple shuttle missions after launch. It was in low Earth orbit, so we could go out there and repair it as needed. We do not have that luxury with the James Webb Space Telescope. It's going out to a Lagrange point, which is much harder to reach and even harder to come back from. So once it's launched and on its way, we're not going to really have an opportunity to make any fixes or changes. So it needs to work the first time. And given how much time and money has gone into this project, NASA will certainly want to make sure that everything is as perfect as they can get it prior to launch. So every time this mission is delayed, obviously it's a bummer. We want it to get out there and start getting amazing scientific data as soon as possible. But none of that's going to happen if we launch it and it's broken. So
exactly,
the extra time and money gone into it will be worth it when we get some sweet scientific data from this mission. So that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And the bummer aspect of it comes from how excited we are about the fact that this telescope is going to provide brand new cutting edge science. And for so long, for so much of all of our lives, we have been working with or dealing with or been taught science based on the things that Hubble and similar instruments can gather. And when we get this new thing up and running and online, it's going to be so cool, because then we all get to learn new stuff, which I know we all love doing. So that's why we're bummed, is because we want to learn new stuff. So it's being bummed about excitement. I'll try and put that little bit of a spin on it there for you.
You know what I was going to point out really quickly? The unsung hero of spaceflight operations, those boom lifts. You see those things all over.
They are truly everywhere, aren't they?
We see them at Cape Canaveral. It's the JLG lifts again. They're everywhere.
Yeah. We see them all over the place in Boca Chica. We see them at Cape Canaveral. I don't know. James Webb is not at the launch site yet. I don't remember where Northrop Grumman is processing that spacecraft. But wherever they are, there are lifts to go with it.
There are lifts. They're everywhere. All right. And y'all, go ahead, Thomas. You were saying?
Just one last bit, because I see a lot of people asking every time this mission gets delayed, what about its rocket? It is supposed to launch on an Ariane 5 rocket. Arianespace, the European company, it is an international project, as the theme of the episode has been apparently. Europe is offering the launch services for this mission, and a lot of people point out that Ariane 5 is supposed to be retired within the next couple years. They're moving on to the new Ariane 6 rocket. But Arianespace has made very clear that no matter how long the James Webb Telescope is delayed, an Ariane 5 will be ready to launch it. They will not retire Ariane 5 until James Webb is off the ground. Given the recent delays to James Webb, it's very possible that this will be the last Ariane 5 mission ever. But they have assured NASA and everyone else that Ariane 5 will be ready whenever James Webb is.
Gotcha. All righty. And continuing on here with James Webb, I mean, I hate to see James Webb keep slipping. I know we want to get the thing launched. I know there's reasons that it slips. I know everybody has tons of opinions on James Webb and how the money's spent and that sort of stuff. It's just one of those things. I mean, I always look forward to seeing it launching. I look forward to seeing big rockets launch. I look forward to all sorts of things. So it's out of my hands exactly what they do with that, but I do hope that I get to see James Webb launch. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears has gone into working on the thing, I know. So anyways. It's always sort of the thing, like you're bummed out or you're like, oh, you're angry or whatever, but I really want to see it launch and I really want to see it deploy successfully and start bringing imagery back so it can inspire the next generation, right?
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited about all the science. And I think I'm not even trying to be negative towards anybody that's working on it. In fact, I hope they all know that they're really appreciated for all the work that they're doing. I just want to learn new things, and I'm impatient because we all have to deal with human timescales. So I want it yesterday.
That is one of the one of the big things is you're like, oh, this rocket or this telescope or whatever. But remember, there are people working on it who don't have all these decision-making powers and stuff, but they're out there every day trying to make it successful. So whatever you think about different projects, don't forget the human beings that are behind making them happen. Just that's going to be my comment on things, right?
And none of them want it delayed either, by the way. So they wished it was launching early too, but they'll launch it when they're ready.
Oh, so the next thing, we've got tons to talk about. The next thing, we've got like we've got a full-on half hour slated for the next thing. Everybody's favorite shiny rocket down in Boca Chica, Texas. This is just going to be all of us sort of chatting about it, but what has been going on down in Boca Chica?
Well, Jack's been editing a lot of our videos. He knows the in and outs of Boca Chica more than anyone else, other than Mary. Mary is, of course, the queen of Boca Chica. But
yeah,
I mean, Jack.
A lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous. Yeah, it's crazy. They've stacked the first complete nose cone fairing nose section. I don't even know what to call it anymore. I guess nose cone.
I'm going to jump in really quickly, Jack. Like, look at this. Look at the quality difference between the old school press. You remember the press event where everybody went out there and they're like, oh, Starship, check it out. Look at the quality of that, which was like Frontier Town facade versus the one that's actually in the high bay. High bay, mid bay. What are we calling that one these days?
That's the windbreak.
That's the windbreak.
That's the very first one that they built. It's a little triangular guy. And it faces into the wind, I think, which is odd. Like I think that's the way the wind predominantly comes from, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Although I could be
off the coast,
wrong.
I think.
But yeah, that's the first structure, and so they've stacked it, and you can, like you said, you can see the increase in build quality on the new one versus the original Mark 1. That was Mark 1 or SN1.
I think that was Mark 1. That was before they switched nomenclatures. Yeah.
Yep. And so everybody knows this is the new one inside the windbreak. This is the old original sort of media facade that they built, put together, and the other one over there is never going to fly, right?
Right.
Alrighty. Cool. So I mean, y'all, I have stacks of pictures to go through. I don't know. Do y'all just want me to bring them up and we'll talk about each one?
I mean, let's talk about the next one that's going to see some testing. I mean, we were hoping yesterday, like you mentioned, SN5. We're getting to the point where they're getting ready to go to a static fire test. It is eventually supposed to do the 150-meter hop that we've been waiting on for a while. Yep. There's that picture of a mass simulator on top, which again, we're all still amazed at how many views the mass simulator video got on the channel.
Is that was cardboard?
Is it?
Yeah, they looked like they had duct taped cardboard shielding so that they could get out of the wind and maybe do some welds a little bit more easily without the wind interfering. When in need, improvise.
Yeah, no kidding. So that's SN5 right there, and I've got lots of pictures of SN5, so I'll just keep going through them.
Yep, SN5 is the latest, or actually it's not the latest. There are other prototypes after SN5 that already exist, but this is the latest to go to the launch site. It is the full-scale Starship prototype without the nose cone on top. But they are hoping to get to a static fire test within the next couple days. Yesterday we were kind of hoping we would see some fuel pump test or fueling test in advance of the static fire test, which we don't think happened. The pad was never cleared yesterday. And they're canceled road closures for today and tomorrow, I believe. So the earliest we could see any testing would be Monday. And can we pull up the road closures to make sure I'm right on that? I want to know when.
We can pull up the road closures. Can we talk behind the road closures? I'm just going to flip it open, flip it closed real quick.
That sweet road closures graphic.
Now the other ones have been canceled. So no earlier than Monday, more testing that would involve road closures. So anything with fueling or anything like that. We will expect a static fire test. The Raptor SN27 has already been installed. So they have to fuel it and fire the engine for a brief static fire test, and if that goes well, they can move on to the 150-meter altitude hop test, which would be the first time we see those new deployable legs tested, as well as the first hop test of a full-scale Starship prototype that wasn't Starhopper, which, again, it's crazy to think the last Starship prototype that flew was Starhopper, which seems forever ago, but, in the grand scheme of things, it's ridiculously fast how fast SpaceX is progressing. But hopefully in the next couple of days, we're going to see some good progress on the Starship SN5 testing front.
Cool. So I mean,
right.
I just have
Do we
tons
want
of
to
videos, like
do we want to
whatever.
run through these? Do we want to run through them like you can see a progression here. Like we can do the nose cone. We can show the nose cone up close. We can
Sure,
talk
here you
about the
go.
build site. Like we can do all that.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the up. What are those? Some sort
Those are, I
of
think
guidance?
Yeah, I don't know if lead in is the right word. I call them that because I heard it on the radio that one
Yeah.
time. I picked up the crane audio when I was there. So
Huh.
those are, I think they just help them align the two halves while they're stacking. So I think as of today, I was editing today's daily Bokeh video earlier. That piece, those lead-ins are gone, and the piece has been welded. So the nose cone has been welded to that section, and it looks like a really nice looking weld too.
Right.
So yeah, that's where they're at with the nose cone. That nose cone has RCS thrusters on it, and the whole 9 yards. And let's see, what is this next one?
The wetlands?
Yeah, do the wetlands.
Yeah,
So
I got it.
You can see there's no shortage of nose cones on site, and this shot was taken from just before they did that stacking. You can see the crane hooked up to the nose, and the nose next to the windbreak there. But this shot really gives you a great overview in terms of like what's going on in Boca Chica right now. This is the build site. This is what's going on at the build site, and you can see SN2, which is basically center frame on the on like a weird, it's like a concrete cylinder kind of thing, sort of in the middle. So that's SN2. That's a test tank, similar to the SN7 test tank that we all saw recently. And you can see there's nose cones that are sitting outside. You can see the Minotaur 18,000 sitting over there. Next to the high bay construction, you can see the mid bay, which is the old high bay, and you can compare, even though the distance away from camera kind of just distorts its height in comparison to the windbreak / small bay, whatever you want to call it. You can sort of compare the scale of everything, and I don't know, it's just a really, really good overview photo from Nomad there.
Yeah. And then we've got this ring stacks in the tent, right? Here's one.
Okay, this one is awesome. This one is kind of like mind-boggling. Because looking at it, it might not look like much to you, but it should really look like a lot.
Right.
There are two ring stacks. There are 2 3-ring stacks. And then there's what is that back there? Is that a 4-ring stack back there?
It looks like it, yeah.
This isn't, I can't take credit for this. I was just reading the forums, and somebody was saying that there's essentially enough ring stacks based on Raphael's great diagrams to make a complete Starship. So all they have to do is take that, stack it all together, and they're good to go. Throw a nose cone on it, one of the many, many, many that they have, and bam, there's SN8, if that's even what that is. And that's not even the whole tent. There's a whole other section of that tent that this photo doesn't cover, and it just illustrates. Even though we see so much of what's going on at Boca Chica, we do not even see the half of it. And there's so much going on in an enclosed space that, who knows what they can just roll out, stack in a couple days' time, and then roll out to the pad. And obviously, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic. It takes a little bit more time and effort than that. But I mean, wow, the tantalizing things that they must have in those tents, and just a brief aside for the appreciation for the openness that we still do have, because that might not last forever, and we have to appreciate it while we can.
Right.
Holy cow, whole entire Starship in a tent ready to go.
In a tent ready to go. I love it.
Right.
Let's see here. What is this one? There's another launch stand, I think. This rusty girder contraption out there. Like,
okay,
you look at it and you're like, seriously? What is this?
A little bit of a correction on this one, just from my own sanity's sake. I think I've labeled this one as like old launch stand being rebuilt, and I don't think it's that, based on people on the forum and whatnot saying no way, it's the old one. It's got to be a brand new one.
You mean like a video label or something, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, it's a new stand. I don't think it's the old one. I could be wrong. I don't know. It's all of this stuff is reading tea leaves.
Yeah, a lot of the times we have like educated guesses about what we're seeing. Like, we think this steel thing's going to be for SN8, or we think this is for a launch stand, and we're like 75% sure. Sometimes we're like pretty certain. Other times it's complete guesswork.
Yeah.
I think we usually get it right.
It might not even be a launch stand. It could just be another test mount or another transport stand, or who knows. But maybe that's. I mean, it would make sense. This is just me speculating off the top of my head right now. They're building the super heavy pad right on the other side of where that is stored. And it is roughly the same, sort of octagonal or circular dimensions as that super heavy pad. So if they threw that on that foundation that they're currently building right now, I would not be shocked.
Right. It is, because there's that big trench or something that we've seen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We already looked at SN5. What is this here? Let me see what this image is. Oh,
poor SN6.
Poor SN6. Wait, why do you say poor SN6?
Well, think about it. Well, one, Michael Baylor's awesome article on NASASpaceflight really kind of shed some light on what everything is going on right now. So if you haven't read that article, I should probably have had that link to throw in the chat, but I don't, but I'm going to keep talking.
That's okay.
In that article, Michael basically pointed out that, hey, SN8 or whatever the next, 304L Starship coming out is going to happen relatively soon. And if you take that photo that we just saw from Nomad
right,
into account, if that is indeed another Starship, potentially SN8 and potentially made out of 304L steel, then what real purpose does SN6 serve? I mean, is it basically SN5's backup in case we get some other kind of issue with SN5? Is SN6 a pathfinder? I mean, there's clearly still work being done on it. I think in one of our recent daily videos, and even in this photo, you can see there's a boom sort of by all those COP Vs down there near the TPS in the lower third of the vehicle. So they're doing work on it. But what information do you think that they can really glean from SN6 if SN5 does the 150-meter hop just fine? I mean, why would you not at that point just move right on to SN8?
Right.
But I'm curious. Maybe SN6 would be like a more of a medium hop kind of situation. I really don't know what its purpose would be, but that's why I say poor SN6. It just seems kind of forgotten and alone. It doesn't have a friend over in its home anymore. Although they're starting to build yet another vehicle in the mid bay there. So
right.
it is starting. It has the beginnings of a new friend. So maybe I'll pity it a little bit less.
I just noticed this. Look, do you see this? Do you think this is air conditioning, or what do you think this hose is? It's like a massive dryer vent.
Probably ventilation.
Yeah,
if you're welding in a confined space like that, you don't want any kind of gases. I mean, I don't know what kind of hazardous gases might be produced from welding in a closed environment like that, but I imagine there are some. Yeah. If not, definitely AC, because holy cow, it is melting out there in Texas right now.
That ventilation makes good sense there. I was trying to see if it connected to something down at the bottom, but it sort of goes down into the stuff on the bottom and goes away. But I just noticed that. I thought it was just a part of the windbreak or something, but you look at it, it looks like a big dryer vent, right?
Yeah, for a second you're like, wait, is that, they put a huge like flap for a wing or something on there? And it's like, no, it's just ventilation.
Yeah, let's see here. What's next on our list? Oh, they're throwing up buildings out there like they're going out of style, aren't they?
Yeah, the high bay is awesome because they are building it with a legendary, like just huge crane, and they are building it with a different construction method. Whereas the mid bay, and I think the windbreak as well, they built the vertical pieces and then they sort of clad the vertical pieces. These are being built on the ground in sort of entire modules. I don't even know if that's the right word. And then those entire chunks are being lifted up and then installed together. Right. Sort of more like an assembly line process rather than like a piece by piece process. And it is shown because they've been able to throw up this initial section incredibly quickly. So that's really cool to see this thing going up so fast. And I think I've seen some people on the forums doing analysis like, oh, maybe it's big enough to hold four 9-meter rings. So, so 4 barrels or 2 barrels and 2 rings about to go on the barrels, right. Or maybe even one 18-meter ring, but I don't think about the whole 18-meter Starship stuff now.
That's a bit far off, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's like standing at the entrance to the mall and thinking, I don't have an analogy. I'm gonna bail on this analogy.
You're gonna bail on this analogy. I give up.
But this building is very exciting because this is going to be the one that's tall enough to stack the first super heavy boosters, which is what Starship needs for an orbital test flight. So where I think as soon as this high bay is done, which given how quickly SpaceX is working down there will probably be sooner rather than later, we're all going to be anxiously waiting for the first vehicle to be stacked in there because it could be a super heavy booster, and that'll be exciting.
And I spent a bunch of time last night catching up on all the forum threads that I have had been neglecting for a little bit, and I saw some really good speculation on there that based on the construction time that it's taken them so far and based on how the mid bay went, end of August, beginning of September.
Do we have like an estimate? Finish. Like this is sort of like 2 panels high, right? I'm just looking at it and it's sort of like 2 things.
This is high. One.
This is one. They just raised it all
up. I believe so. This is basically, if I'm not mistaken, this is basically one section, and then people again on the forum are saying it's either going to be 3 or 4 of these sections.
So that's where I was going. Like, how tall is it going to be eventually? And I just see 2 sort of girder external exoskeleton braces or whatever that is, right?
Yeah, those are actually added afterwards.
Really?
Yeah, they lifted up
and
the
they
flat
sort of
portions,
lock it in or whatever.
They stood them up, they locked them in, and then they bolted those things. That's actually, I think, the most recent daily update video we did. It's those being added.
No kidding.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that.
I guess I mean, maybe it's just designed that way. It gives them the most room to work around inside, but then the external structure that makes it a little bit more structurally sound or whatever. Like, if you put that inside the building, you'd have less space to move around inside, right? But
exactly.
Who cares if it's on the outside? You just need it not to fall over in the wind or whatever, right?
Yeah, we get that asked a lot on the comments to our videos. Like, hey, what are those external structures? What are those external structures? And I wish I had a name for them, so I could just label it and say they're blah, they're for stiffening or whatever. But I've seriously sat for like 20 minutes trying to come up with a concise way to explain what they are in like a 2-line little label.
The little label that comes on the screen, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like wall stiffener makes the building better. Like, I don't
start putting exoskeleton. Like, I like exoskeleton for chat.
High bay exoskeleton sounds pretty cool.
It sounds legit. Actually, I really like that. I appreciate the input.
It sort of is, I guess. What is this one? Let's see here. This one is labeled Mark 1 fins.
Oh yes. Back to poor Mark 1 that will never see flight. They did stick some fins on the Mark 1 vehicle for that press event. But the design has changed since then. Elon said they're still tweaking the aerodynamic surfaces that Starship's going to use. And again, we won't likely see those until you see a Starship vehicle do a higher speed and high altitude hop test. Because when you're only going to 150 meters, aerodynamics aren't as important. But when we finally see one with a nose cone, we're going to see the canards up front and the big aero surfaces towards the bottom. And we're looking forward to seeing those, but the Mark 1 fins are at least slightly different, and they're still hanging out in Boca Chica, but they're never going to see flight, unfortunately.
I don't know if I would say that. I mean,
really? What's your theory, Jack?
Well, I don't have a theory. All I know is that they've been moving them around, as you can see in these photos, and they have just recently, in the most recent daily update video, they washed them. They power washed them.
They power washed them?
At first, when they started moving them around, we're kind of thinking like, oh, here we go, they're headed to Scrap Town, like all the other disused parts. But no, they have not been taken to the scrapyard yet, and in fact, they have been washed. So I don't know why you would wash something that you were not going to use. It's putting in time and hours on something that it doesn't really make sense. I mean, maybe they would use it for some sort of like display piece, like maybe remake Mark 1 into like a monument out front. I don't know. Or maybe they would use a less accurate, less representative of final design fin on an actual flight vehicle, just as a, hey, we have these laying around, they're good enough. If the vehicle goes kabloom, we're not losing much because we've already had these sitting around. So who knows? They could see flight. The fact that they power washed them is really, really curious. So.
Yeah, actually, the power wash video was just posted up with a timestamp. So let me. Oh, something went wrong when I tried to go to that link.
Oh no.
Oh, that's not good. Let's try it one more time.
I do think the most recent update from Elon on the design was that it was a pretty slight tweak to the aero surfaces. So you could, the theory, the hypothesis that the first vehicle to need aerodynamic surfaces like the Mark 1 fins could be good enough. I could potentially see that happening, although given that SN5 has not been tested yet, it would seem that they have sufficient time to produce a set of the new aero surfaces, in which case, why wouldn't they just use those whenever they're ready for that? But you're right, I do forget that they were power washing them, so maybe not scrap yet. Could be interesting to see.
Yeah, super curious.
Yeah.
So next up, we have the crow's nest here, which is what I'm calling this weather station that they've installed on top of one of the tanks in the tank farm.
There's a lot of cameras on that thing.
It is loaded with PTZ cameras, which I learned today. Not today, but recently I learned point, tilt, zoom. Or no, pan, tilt, zoom.
Pan, tilt, zoom. Point till zoom pretty close to it. That's fine.
I labeled them that in a video recently, and I had to redo a whole render for like 15 minutes because I was checking it before uploading it, and I saw point, tilt, zoom, and I was like, and I knew nobody would care, but you got to have standards, man.
If you put something wrong there, though, it drives engagement. Like everybody comments on it. When you misspell something, you label it not quite right. Like
that's the key. But intentionally put in very slight errors in the video so you get more comments. Playing the game.
The algorithm or whatever.
Yeah, troll your audience. Got it. Nothing go wrong. So yeah, the crow's nest has been fitted with a whole ton of these cameras. I think some of them are thermal cameras, some of them are optical, and then that central mast there that you can see. You can't see it in this photo, but that mast leads up to 3 different anemometers. Which, fun fact, anemometer is what you call those little
mini bits.
Basically a wind vane. Yeah, a little, the thing with the little cups on the end of like a little propeller kind of thing, and it measures the speed of the wind. So it's got triple redundancy on wind speed measurements. It's got all kinds of cameras pointed all kinds of ways. I mean, both at the tank farm to know if the tank farm has any kind of gas leak or any kind of issues with that. It's also pointed at the vehicle.
Right.
I mean, so this thing, between the crow's nest, between Hopper's skills, because Hopper has all of the crazy different cameras on it, and between Zeus, the robot dog, the robo dog, they'll be able to have really, really good situational awareness of the entire site.
Right.
Both during and after tests and flying spaghetti monster prohibit anomalies.
Flying spaghetti monster prohibit anomalies.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh jeez. We have a couple more. Let's just run through the rest of these pretty quickly. That looks like steel on a truck, doesn't it?
Yep, the steel deliveries have not stopped. They've been continuing. I don't know if it's one a day or what, but I don't know if I maybe made too much hay about this, but I feel like there was very recently we were getting multiple rolls per truck, and now we're getting a single roll per truck. And I don't know what to make of that difference. If anything, I don't know if there is any meaning in that difference, but yeah. So.
I mean, I could see them limiting the axle weight of a truck based on the roads out there or something. Like if carrying multiple roads or rolls of it violated like a bridge capacity or the road capacity or something, and it was causing damage to the road, that might be one reason, but that may have nothing to do with it. I don't know what the weight of a steel roll is and the weight of the road. Because, you go over a bridge and you see like, oh, gross vehicle weighting is this. And that's the only thing I could think of that would cause them to not carry as many per load,
Right. Yeah. It does look like if they're only carrying one at a time, it is a weight limit. But that doesn't explain, like in the past, they were definitely bringing multiple. So either, something had to change.
Or they realized.
Because the new steel shouldn't be heavier. Like moving to 304 shouldn't be heavier, I wouldn't think, right?
No, shouldn't. But I mean, what do I know?
Yeah.
I mean, the 304 isn't coming from SpaceX. This isn't the proprietary version the alloy that SpaceX wants to build yet. Because if it was that, I would kind of guess that it could be this is as fast as SpaceX is producing them, so they're shipping them as soon as they're ready. I guess that could in theory still be the case with this, where whatever supplier they're getting from can only produce them at a certain rate, so they're shipping them as soon as they have them. Given how quickly they're turning said steel into rings and vehicles, would make sense. So that I guess that's another theory. I don't know. There's a couple of different explanations, but.
Gotcha. Is there anything else that we need to go? I mean, there's so many pictures of Starship every time we go through this. It said 30 minutes, but I feel like we still have 15 minutes on this one. I'm just looking at the time there that's not quite matching up. Launch mount, build site seen from the launch site. Is there anything else that we missed there, or?
We can take some questions.
Yeah, we've definitely got some time for some questions. We got time.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Let's see here. So let me do this really quickly. And y'all, I'm sort of bouncing all over the map here because I just had a massive storm warning go off on my phone, and it's thundering and lightning outside, and I can hear the wind and rain hitting the side of the house. So if I disappear, the show should go on, but I may disappear here if I get knocked offline. But what I meant to do, Sheldon Case, thank you for joining the channel membership there. That is Sheldon Chase, who now has access to the Discord and stuff like that. Moldy Space Industries, a super chat came through. Thank you, Moldy Space Industries, super chat for Thomas. There you go, Thomas. Earning the super chats there for us. And No C, thank you for the 5. That one's going to be euros, isn't it? We appreciate the €5 super chat there as well. So let's go through some of the questions. We always get these questions over and over again, especially when it comes down to Starship. Here's the first one. When is SN5 going to get tested? What's on the schedule now? That's what we're looking at. That was road closures, right?
Right. That is the million-dollar question. No earlier than Monday is when the next road closure is scheduled. So that is the next time they could fuel the Starship vehicle for whatever test they want to do, whether that's a fueling test or a static fire. So that is the technical no earlier than. I do think we're still expecting some sort of fuel pump test of some kind prior to static fire. So if I had to put a notional timeline, I would expect a static fire attempt sometime next week, and then a hop maybe about a week after that. That's super loose, and it depends on how the previous tests go. And the Starship testing schedule is super fluid, but we're looking at this coming week for testing to resume.
Right. And that's the same sort of thing. Like we said, we were standing by yesterday, weren't we? Because we thought there was going to be some tests. Mary rolled the camera out. We had the live stream going sort of back behind the scenes. Mary spooled up the feed to us and stuff like that. But the road was closed for a lot of the day. And then there was no real clear indication that they did any testing that really showed us anything. Doesn't mean they didn't do testing. But we stood by for hours watching the feed. We were sharing it with the members back in Discord, but we never actually spooled up the whole thing because there was no clear indication. So every day, even us, SpaceX doesn't announce these things like today for sure we're going to do this. We look at the road closures and we sort of guess what's going to go on. So anytime you ask us when is this going to get tested, it's always our best guess, like this one. Billy asked when they do the 150-meter hop, how will it land? So do we know when the 150-meter hop is happening, and do we know how it's supposed to land when it comes back down again?
It will happen after the SN5 static fire test.
That makes sense.
That's the most exact answer I can give you. Like I said, I would guess a few days to a week after the static fire test, which again could happen this week sometime. Is my guess, and that's just based on how the previous schedules have kind of panned out. As far as how will it land, so it's going to lift off from the launch mount, which will be interesting because only using one Raptor engine, it is slightly off the center of mass. So there's going to be a slight power slide if you're familiar with the Atlas V 1 booster configurations, or also Antares. It isn't because of a mass thing, but they also power slide off the pad a bit. So something similar to that. But it's very slight, and then it'll fly up 150 meters. It will translate sideways over to where the landing pad is, and then as it lands, it will deploy its new landing legs, which we have not seen tested before.
They're sort of tucked up in the skirt, right?
Right. You can't see them looking at the prototype right now because they are within the thrust skirt that also encapsulates the Raptor engine.
Right.
And the legs kind of fold outwards from there. So that's going to be the first time we'll see that. On the way down from its 150-meter apogee, it will see the legs deploy, and it'll touch down at a landing pad that's not too far from the launch mount in Boca Chica.
Gotcha. All right, let me see what else we have in terms of questions so we can get a couple through here. Let's see here. Any speculation on what the mysterious construction is near the Boca Chica pad? So mysterious construction, is that the drilling they were doing? Or I'm not sure. There's lots of mysterious construction out there.
Some people are calling it the bunker, or it's basically near the Starship launch pad. They poured a whole bunch of concrete. They poured a foundation and a bunch of like really heavy rebar and concrete walls. I honestly don't know what it is. I wish I did. There was that banner at the launch site a little while ago that said like new mission control center or something like that. And so a lot of people are like, oh, is it going to be, there are going to be people in that? And I don't think for a second that it's meant to be a structure for people to inhabit.
Because it's like at the launch site, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's definitely not like a mission control, for humans, but maybe it's a room where they keep a whole bunch of electronics, maybe some server banks. I think somebody identified some actual server racks in the dirt at the launch site recently. So it could be, signal conditioning and a relay to send everything over to Stargate or wherever they do have their crewed mission control. So like I don't know if that is really a satisfying answer. It seems like a really robust structure, and it could be as simple as just like a big garage for vehicles or items at the pad that they don't want, or can't move when they're doing testing. That it's easier to wheel something in a big garage that's been fortified than than not. So it could be either of those things. I honestly don't know.
Yeah. As they put more and more of it together, we'll probably have better and better guesses as more is revealed. It's like scratching off a picture or whatever. Right?
Yeah. One thing I did want to note is it is in kind of a similar location to where the old they had like a mobile home, like mobile office kind of situation,
right?
That got blown up with SM4's anomaly. It's kind of in a similar location to that. So maybe if they had some computers and stuff in there, once that got blown up, that they were like, oh, let's build a more permanent structure.
I wonder if they could be a control center not for vehicle testing, but for testing like ground support equipment and stuff, things that you don't have to have the pad cleared for. Is that a possibility maybe?
I guess, yeah. I mean, we'll see. Like Das said, as they continue to build it, we'll get more clues as to what it'll be used for. And you better believe, as soon as I know what it is, I'm going to label it.
And I just thought of another. How far is that? Is that at the Super Heavy launch site or the Starship launch site?
Starship launch site, and it's basically if you drew a triangle between the Starship launch mount, the tank farm, and the road, it would be closest to the road portion of the point of the triangle. This is not a good way to describe that. And I think I'm probably even wrong. But basically, it's near the tank farm and near the tank farm and Starship launch mount.
So it's not at the Super Heavy mount, but I would imagine it is still too close to the Super Heavy mount. Like you can't have people there if Super Heavy's fueled or something, right?
Yeah, it's like
right.
It's like
I'm trying to think of other things they could be controlling
area
from there, or some other, But I think some sort of computer room or control room for things other than fueling operations. It would be my guess. But
they have a lot of, or at least the last time I was there, and even time and time again, they have a lot of stuff at the pad, and some of that stuff you might just want not sitting out. It could be as simple as that. And whether it's the thrust simulator or whether it's actual electronics or what, that's the best answer I have on what that new construction is.
Gotcha. Let's grab a couple more questions here, and then we will move on to the next thing here. Let's see. Here's one. Any chance that we'll see a crane installed in the top of the high bay, like the VAB? Have you seen the big rail cranes in the top of the VAB? Do we think we're going to see cranes installed inside the buildings at Boca Chica anywhere?
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, we don't know yet, but it certainly seems like a possibility. That ground fabrication building, kind of like the low garage type structure at the launch site, that thing has an overhead gantry crane in it. And we know that the mid bay has like that side elevator thing. So, there's all sorts of different stuff that they could end up putting in there. An overhead crane would make a lot of sense given that they have so many rental cranes on site. You would
they do have a lot of cranes.
Start installing more permanent fixtures, but I'm not a rocket scientist.
So really quick, look, I can point this out from this picture here. From this perspective, if I'm not mistaken, Bluezilla, you can see it in the background of the picture there, right? You should be able to see my mouse. That's something like 2 miles away from this camera. That crane is huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because Mary
2.2 miles.
Yeah. How far?
2.2. I measured it on Google Maps.
God, no kidding. That's a huge crane. But like we were saying, if you've ever been inside the VAB or seen pictures, they have those big permanently mounted cranes that are there to move pieces around inside the VAB. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing things like that out of Boca Chica too. One more question. Let's grab one more question here from this. This is actually really curious. How do you get rid of the lead-ins without upsetting the alignment? This question has been consuming me ever since the video dropped. I have no idea how to get them out. So let me see. Where do we
have like a close-up of those?
Yeah, I saw. What was that in? Nose cone stacked, maybe? I forget which picture that was in. No,
it's really interesting. Okay, so this one kind of drove me crazy because, oh man, how much inside baseball should I go here?
I don't know. I mean, I want to know because it looks like if you put that nose cone down, it would pinch
Can we enhance that picture potentially? Can we zoom in on that, Das? And get a close-up?
Enhance.
That was enhanced. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
So are they just mounted on the outside of the lower barrel?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I don't even know if they're welded. At first I thought they were welded, but I was cutting one of the daily videos and it just looked like, okay, so I try to keep all the videos in chronological order from when Mary gives them to us. But occasionally I will swap one video like in front of another if it just looks nicer or makes a little bit better sense for the edit. And so I did that with one of these, and I noticed, oh wait, there's way less lead-ins on this one. So it looked like they started off with less before stacking. They put a whole bunch on to where it looks like now. And then if you see on the left side of the frame, there's like one every so often. And then sort of near where we get to the more right side,
they're spaced out more.
Widens out. They're spaced out more, exactly. So those initially they had lead-ins much closer together there, and they at some point right before they were stacking, they took a bunch out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they are even welded in, because it seemed like a really easy operation for them to just sort of switch out that configuration.
If they're being removed after stacking, I would bet that they don't want to weld them on. They don't need to hold any weight. They're literally there to
just
correct
guide
me if
it
I'm
in.
wrong. Yeah, as they have the crane holding the nose cone, they just guide it into place and help them get the alignment correct. But they don't they're not load bearing, so they don't need to be super tightly adhered to that bottom barrel. You could literally glue them on and then rip them off when you're done, I would think. So I would imagine. So I would imagine that they are more loosely adhered to the bottom barrel. And since they're only mounted on the outside, to answer the original question, once the actual nose cone is mounted and welded, you can take the alignments off the side, which is not, it's not in between the two sections or anything, so you can take it off without upsetting anything.
Yeah. To me, those really look like they're tack welded. They just have a little tack right there and a little tack
or like
up
a very
at the top.
small. That would work. Yeah.
They really do look.
That makes sense.
See how they're all different? It's almost like just a little quick tack weld, and you do that a lot when you just need to temporarily hold something in place. It's not a structural weld. It's not load bearing for like the long term. But you're just like, hey, I need to hold this still. And you'll see welders sometimes tack weld something in, then do the full weld, and then grind off the tack weld and be done with it. So just based on this picture and the enhance on this picture, I sort of feel like that's what's going on. Amy D, thank you so much for the super chat there really quickly. We appreciate the $9.99. Thank you for the support for our CSI Boca Chica inspection of whatever's going on here.
Yeah, we thank you everyone who does super chats and channel memberships, and we all of those financial donations and things like that really help support Mary down in Boca Chica, our crews at Cape Canaveral, and everything that goes into all of our news coverage. So we greatly appreciate it.
Yep. All right. So really quickly here, there's always so much going on at Boca Chica, y'all. We almost never are able to get through the entire thing. You know that every single day we've got videos that come out. Mary, Boca Chica gal, out there every day capturing videos. Jack up there at the top, and then also Brady editing every single day. So turn on the notifications here on the NASA Spaceflight channel, and you'll get these little bite-sized chunks every single day. It's almost like you wake up in the morning and you're drinking your coffee and you're watching what's going on at Boca Chica. So Jack up there at the top, and then also Brady editing those. Thank y'all so much. And Mary capturing them every single day. Are we doing another recap video, Jack? Are we got that on the schedule for this week?
Yeah, I guess what I'm doing after this.
A recap video.
There you go.
So we're also trying to do a narrated recap video where once a week we say, here's what happened over the course of the week, and then somebody talks you through it. We know we're a little bit sort of off the cuff when we're doing the live shows. It's not as bite-sized, but we're working on those so you have a verbal recap if that's the way you like to keep up with stuff. But anyway, speaking of recaps, Jack, some things launched this week, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, can we just watch the video of you reacting to the launch?
Yes, please. That was amazing.
Tell me this is a timestamp version.
We have a minute scheduled for this recap, and all I want to do is watch your amazement at how fast the Minotaur launches off the pad. So this is the first launch of the Minotaur 4 from Wallops, which is in Virginia. It is on NRO payload, NRO 129, and yeah. Just look how fast that thing goes.
Doss's reaction to this live was priceless.
Yeah, I seriously, there was no end to my enjoyment of watching him react to Minotaur 4. I loved it so much. I really, really, really enjoyed it.
I've seen a lot of rocket launches.
It's a solid rocket motor, and it's extremely fast off the pad, and it clearly took you by surprise. I mean, it took me by surprise. I think all of us. So. That's Minotaur 4 from Wallops for the first time, launching an NRO payload for the National Reconnaissance Office.
Michael just dropped a timestamp version of our webcast of this launch. If we could cut to that, please.
Please.
I'll grab it. All right. I'm not
It's
pushing
so
audio
good.
through, but here we go. Look. So this was us. This was our reactions. Am I on the screen here?
Yep.
Admolisher in chat says, I could see it from my house. It was really moving. Look at us. Look at him. Just look at his face.
It's so good.
He's like, is this real life?
He like questioned everything as soon as it pitched over. It was awesome.
Oh, I was saying I've seen a lot of rockets launch, but I'm used to them sort of lumbering off the pad, and this thing's just like, nope, I'm gone. I'm going to space. So, I have a lot of fun watching.
For those who are not aware, the Minotaur 4 is just a converted ICBM, converted into our space launching rocket. So it wastes no time getting off the pad. It's fully solid fueled. Don't launch very often, but when they do, it's spectacular.
Yeah, I like the entire Minotaur series because they're all converted, or derived from ICBMs. Right. So it's always kind of nice when you do the whole what is it, guns to plowshares type deal.
Yeah, swords to plowshares. Yeah. This thing broke the sound barrier after like 17 seconds or something, didn't it?
Something ridiculous. I think it was fast. In under a minute. It was Mach 4. I'm pretty sure, which is just absurd. Yeah.
Oh, geez. So that's the launches that we had this week. A couple other launches were scheduled, but they've been sort of slipping around.
Yeah.
And I believe, let me make sure. I don't know if I have the correct graphic, but that launch date is good to go. Let me see if we can bring this up real quick with the launch schedule. There we go.
Yeah.
So, Thomas, what's going on? What can we expect to see launching this week?
Right. So only one launch last week, partly due to some delays, but this week we've got a full schedule. Just under 24 hours from now, we'll have the first one from Japan, an H-2A rocket from the Tanegashima Space Center, and that will be carrying the Al-Amal Mars orbiter that is from the United Arab Emirates. We talked about this a good length last week because it was supposed to launch last week, but due to some weather in Japan, that launch has been delayed. It is now this week, tomorrow at 21:58 UTC. And here on NASASpaceflight, we are planning to have live coverage of that launch, a big interplanetary mission, the UAE's first mission to the Red Planet. So we are looking forward to that. Just afterwards, and we just had this launch be publicly delayed right before the show started, the next SpaceX Falcon 9 launch carrying the NASAS-2 communication satellite for the South Korean military. That mission will lift off from Cape Canaveral in Florida now no earlier than Monday, July 20th, and that is in a window from 2100 UTC to 0055 UTC. So a long window for that mission, but that is now no earlier than Monday evening. The first stage for that mission is B1058.2, the same first stage that launched Bob and Doug on the Demo 2 mission. And if this launch date holds, that booster will break the turnaround record for an orbital rocket currently held by Space Shuttle Atlantis. So we're going to keep an eye on that. After liftoff, that stage will land on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions in the Atlantic Ocean. And once again, NASASpaceflight will have live coverage of that launch. And then after those two, we have 3 launches slated for July 23rd, one of which is the Long March 5 mission with, I'm going to get the pronunciation, Tianwen-1 Mars mission from China. And that is no earlier than 0400 UTC on the 23rd from the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center. After that, we will have a Russian Soyuz 2 rocket from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan that will be carrying the Progress MS-15 cargo spacecraft to the International Space Station. That liftoff is scheduled for 1426 UTC, with docking just about 3 hours after liftoff, so a very fast rendezvous. And that will, interestingly, be the last visiting vehicle movement at the International Space Station before Bob and Doug return to Earth aboard Dragon Endeavour, no earlier than August 2nd. Departure August 1st, splashdown August 2nd, I believe is the current schedule.
Departing from the station, right?
Right, departing from the station and then splashdown the next day.
Gotcha.
And then a potential third launch on July 23rd, another Chinese mission, this one a Long March 4B rocket with the Ziyuan-3 satellite, an Earth observation satellite from the Taiwan Satellite Launch Center. We don't have a liftoff time for that mission yet, so stay tuned. But a full schedule of 5 orbital launches for this coming week.
Yep. And we're going to try to live cover the interplanetary mission, right?
Yep. The All mission and the Falcon 9 mission, definitely. If there is a webcast for the Chinese Mars mission,
right?
Decent chance we could try and do some live coverage for that. We don't know if we'll have a live feed, though, so if we have nothing to show you, obviously we won't bother. But hopefully, if we get a feed from China, that would be cool to cover live as well.
Yeah, gotcha. It's one of those things where if we can't get somebody physically to the launch site, we'll
Right.
use a feed sometimes, depending on how big the mission is.
Right.
But we'll have to see. We never know if we're going to actually get a feed from the Chinese launches, so we'll keep an eye on that. That wraps up what's launching this week. What I want to do next, really quickly, is thank a couple people. Gerardiel, let's see, I'm going to go with Gerardiel there. Thank you for joining the NASA Spaceflight membership there. We appreciate the support. And then XCL Nav, thank you so much for the $10 super chat, making it so that we can keep on keeping on with these broadcasts, all the covers that we're able to do and that sort of stuff. So y'all, thank you both for the support there. Yeah, there we go. It switched over to the super chat. So that brings us to some time for Q&A. Did I forget anything? I don't think I forgot anything.
Nope, I think we're ready for Max Q&A.
Max Q&A. All right, good deal. So we've got just about 22 minutes left in the broadcast, and we've been gathering some questions that you've been asking over the course of the broadcast. Again, if you have something, mention us at NASASpaceflight in there, and that goes into a little bit of a queue. We don't always have time to get to everything. Sometimes the questions, they're just, we'll see what we can get through. But let me start picking some questions here. We got the lead-in question already. I know we got that one. Let's pull something out of the queue here.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like a leading question. Oh, a lead into the segment, but no, you were talking about the physical lead-ins that we were just talking about at Starship.
The guides, yeah. I was confused as well. I was like, are they talking about our broadcast? Here's one. This is Dragon Block Unity.
What a name.
Have they done a hop yet? If not, do they have one planned? So talking about Boca Chica, there has been a hop of Hopper.
Yes.
And they do have future ones planned, right?
Right, so we had the Star Hopper vehicle, whose only purpose was to do a very low altitude flight test of the Raptor engine. It had very little else in common with the eventual Starship vehicle. But yeah, we had there was a 20-meter hop and then a 150-meter hop with that vehicle. And that vehicle now stands tall at the Starship launch site, watching over the rest of the launch complex. So that is the only one we've had so far. We have not had a full-scale Starship prototype do a hop yet. That is the current task for Starship SN5, the one currently at the launch site. If all goes well, that will be the next one to do a hop test. Yeah.
And even SN5, it's full scale, but it doesn't have the nose cone and.
But it does have the nose cone on top, right?
It's missing it. So comes from, right?
The section that it does have is at the correct scale, but it does not have the upper nose cone portion yet.
Right. And it is a mass simulator. Not because it's simulating mass, but because it's simulating mass that should be there when the vehicle is complete. Can I just say that out loud?
Yeah, and just to really quickly, in case we have any people who are really particular watching right now, in the comments we frequently get a lot of like, say it's a nose cone mass simulator. Say it's a nose cone mass simulator. It's not just simulating mass. It has actual mass. I don't know that it is a nose cone mass simulator. It could be simulating propellant mass. It could be simulating other parts of the vehicle that have mass besides just the nose cone. That so I stick to mass simulator. It's a common term in the spaceflight world. So mass simulator it is.
Yes, and it is an actual term that's used in spaceflight. It's not something that we made up or mislabeled or anything. They say it's a mass simulator when they're doing this test or whatever, right? All the time we get somebody who's so clever and they're like, oh, it has actual mass. It's not simulating mass.
Right.
I just had to toss that out there.
Some may remember perhaps the most famous mass simulator, the Tesla Roadster that's currently in deep space. That is not a term we made up. But yeah, it's not just the nose cone either, because the nose cone itself, and the reason this vehicle doesn't need it is because that's normally where you'd put most of your payload for whatever this vehicle's launching. Obviously, for a hop test, you don't actually put any payloads on board. So it's simulating the extra weight of a whole bunch of different things. So
yeah, it could be the structure of the rocket, the nose cone, some payload in there. Who knows? Right. We don't have an exact list of exactly why they're putting that roll steel up on the top. But it's simulating something that's going to be there when we see a whole Starship fly. So let's see here. Moving right along to another question. This is a good one. Ali asks, is Starship going to provide artificial gravity in its mission to Mars? And how are they going to do that? Have we heard anything about a Starship and artificial gravity at all? Spinning?
No, I don't think so.
Elon has vaguely hinted in the past that, you could spin up a Starship to create artificial gravity in theory. I don't know if that's a plan. It would be more. So in order to briefly go over the physics really quickly,
right?
When it's a relatively small vehicle like a single Starship, you have to spin it relatively quickly to get an equivalent effective gravity force.
Right.
There have been concepts in the past of like tethering spacecraft together and spinning them around that tether, so the rotation isn't the same, but you still get that same gravitational force because they're farther apart. But it depends. There's no firm plans or anything, so we would have to wait and see.
Yeah. I'd be really curious to see that. I think probably the most realistic one for Starship is the tether idea. I love this concept, so I'm going to just draw it really quickly and then go to the next question. Let's just move the title card and the launch schedule, and then
any question that gets you to draw is a successful question.
I like it. If you have a Starship, right, and what are there, 8 meters, something like that, and this is the inside of a Starship, if you put an axis down the middle of it and you spin this thing like this, right? Say you're going to try to spin it like a big space station or something, and you're standing here like that, and you're trying to get gravity, right? By putting your feet on the outside, it's going to make you sick. Because when the radius is too small, the velocity differential between your head and your feet is too big. Yep. You can't spin like that and get artificial gravity with such a small radius. You're not going to be able to want to go anywhere on that. So in order to spin, you need a bigger radius. That's why we look at these big space stations or something like this with this little tiny hub and the arms going out. You spin the whole thing and you have like a 50-meter radius, and then it's easy to stand in here like this, right? So if you've got Starships going, I think the most realistic way to simulate gravity would be to have 2 Starships sort of together, way apart. This isn't really to scale like that, and then put a tether between them. Tether doesn't take up a lot of room. It's not a lot of structure. It's not a lot of mass, but you tie 2 of them together and you spin them around a common axis like this. Since I don't know anything about engineering, you spin them around an axis, you get this really big radius. Your spin rate can be slower for the same amount of gravity. And I think that's the most realistic thing that they might do if they get down to doing anything. But good. I just wanted to draw for a minute there and to go over that.
Stuff I think like that, my head always immediately goes to like, but where's the reference frame? And then if you do intend to do that, like, how do you design the entire Starship to both be serviceable or like workable, under Earth gravity, in-flight stresses, and then also the tethering stresses, and then also like everything oriented in the Starship has to you have to decide to orient all the control panels and screens and everything in a certain way. And even just like the chairs. So the chairs would have to like orient into a different way, so that
look at the expanse where they move around automatically.
So I think pretty much up until or so far, I think Elon's solution to like radiation and gravity and a lot of those questions are just go really fast, get there ASAP. But I'm not sure what the current thinking is because stuff changes so fast. But I distinctly remember him talking about just like, oh, well, if we go there really, really fast with a big rocket that can expend more of its propellant to get there faster, it's less of an issue. But
we float around for a couple months while we get there, right?
Exactly.
It's worth noting that the average transit time, and of course it depends on the vehicle and how the planets align and stuff, the average transit time between Earth and Mars is anywhere from like 4 months to like 9 months. And we have had people live on the International Space Station for longer than that, with no artificial gravity or anything like that. So we know humans would be fine on a long distance journey to Mars without any artificial gravity. It's not a necessity. And it's also worth noting that the gravity on the surface of Mars, while it exists, it is way less than the surface of Earth. So you do want your crew to actually start getting acclimated to a lower gravity environment. Which could mean that if you do want artificial gravity, you only spin it fast enough to simulate Mars gravity and help your astronauts get accustomed to that. So there's a couple different ways they could go with it. I'm personally, if I had to guess, they just don't bother. That the astronauts, live in microgravity for a couple of months and then arrive on Mars. But we'll see.
Yep. Let me grab some more questions here. Super chats real quick. Gabor, thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate the support there, so we can keep on keeping on. And then Sam Halter, good info presented with fun. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Sam. We have a lot of fun doing this. I don't have like a PhD in tether physics or anything like that, but I know enough to be dangerous and draw about it, right? We appreciate the $20 super chat. Let's grab another question. Ron Smith, let's go over to James Webb real quick. Ron Smith asks, are there any windows or time restrictions on a James Webb Space Telescope launch? Do we know anything about that there?
It is not like an interplanetary window, like, so currently we're in a Mars transfer window, which is why we have 3 Mars missions, the Chinese one, the Japanese, or the European, or sorry, the Emirati one launching on a Japanese rocket, and then NASA Perseverance is also coming up at the end of the month. And the reason they're all launching at this time is because to go to Mars, there are specific times where the physics works out, the planets are in the right place relative to one another, that it's easy to launch. That does not hold true for a Lagrange point. You can pretty much launch there any day of the year. So nothing like that in consideration for James Webb.
Yeah, you get down to things like range availability and then collision avoidance, where you can't launch in a certain place because there's something flying over that you want to stay clear of. But you have a lot more flexibility.
And that applies to literally every single rocket launch. There will be, there's a time of day where, depending on the rocket profile and everything like that, where the burns happen at the right place to go to your Lagrange point. But there should be an opportunity pretty much every day once they're ready to launch. So it's not a, it's not a weeks long launch window that they have to hit or anything like that.
Once they're ready to launch.
Once they are ready, the James Webb Telescope has to be ready and on its rocket, ready to go.
It does. All right, let's grab another question here. Can y'all tell, like, my monitor that has the questions on it is like way up there, so it looks like I'm looking to the sky when I read a question?
It's okay, Das, because on YouTube, the chat section is on the right of the screen, so it looks like you're just looking at chat. You're good.
Perfect. I'm like looking over at chat right now. When is Ariane 5 slated to be retired? Can we grab that one real quick?
I can Google it real quick. Hold on, because I don't want to get it wrong.
Do we know when they're supposed to launch Ariane 6?
Ariane 6 is no... Oh, all right, I was about to say what I think the answer is, and now I'm questioning myself, so I'll Google that one too. Hold on. I believe Ariane 5 is expected to fly through 2022-ish.
Okay.
And again, we have James Webb towards the end of 2021 right now, which is why I said, if it delays a little bit further, you could start thinking about, like, it's the last Ariane 5 launch, but there's still a couple flights afterwards with the current schedule. Ariane 6 is no earlier than mid-2021.
Wait, just one second. Jack, could you say something real quick, please? No, we've lost your audio, it looks like, for some reason. Stand by. Say something else.
We can hear Jack. Maybe stream can't hear Jack.
Yeah. Whatever happened is we've lost your audio here.
YouTube just got tired of your voice, Jack. They muted you.
Yeah. Yeah, just stand by. I'll work on that. Thomas, continue talking there, please, for me.
So to answer the original question, Ariane 6 no earlier than mid-2021. That's when it's going to come online. And Ariane 5 will hang out until James Webb is ready, at least. Looking to fly at least until like 2022 or so. And Arianespace transferring to their next generation launcher. But yeah, I'll keep
talking. Here, let me get you
I'll
another
keep
question.
mumbling on. Any other questions that I can grab like real quick?
This one's for you, Thomas. This one's for you. Let's see here. When should we have the static fire, and how soon after that, if it's successful, will there be a hop? Talking about Boca Chica there. I'll get see if I can check back in.
So again, the hard evidence that we have is the road closures, which currently the next one is scheduled for Monday the 20th. So that is the next time we could see any sort of testing involving fueling of the vehicle, that's Starship SN5, which would obviously be required for any sort of static fire or hop test. We think the current theory is that they're going to do some sort of fueling test before a static fire. So let's say, just for argument's sake, that happens on Monday. We could see a static fire potentially the next day on Tuesday. But again, both of those have to go perfectly. So give yourself a little bit of room for delays for those. Let's say static fire happens next week at some point. Once they do that, they're going to want to get ready for the hop test. For the static fires, the vehicle is held down to the launch mount, so they have to remove those mechanisms in order to allow the vehicle to fly. They may also have to do extra preparations for the launch site. for the vehicle to actually lift off, as well as the landing pad. They have to make sure that's clear for the vehicle to land, of course. There's always the potential for extra tests of the landing legs themselves while it's sitting on the launch mount, because that is something that that's going to have to work successfully for the hop test. So let's give ourselves some room for all of that to take place. And my current hypothesis is, let's say about a week after the static fire test, you see a hop test. It could be earlier than that if they've done all the pre-hop preparations already. That test flight could happen pretty shortly after the static fire test, so as early as next week. Or if the static fire returns some data that's worth checking out, and they want to take some extra time to make sure they're fully ready to go, it could be later than that.
Okay.
So yeah, static fire no earlier than next week, hop after that.
I wasn't going to stop him. Jack, make a noise real quick.
Check, check, 1, 2.
There you go. I think we've had Jack back for like 3 minutes now, Thomas, and I wasn't going to interrupt you.
Well, I wanted to fully answer the question. I didn't know how much time you needed, so I kept talking.
I appreciate you. You gave me all the time I needed to completely restart the audio substream and completely reconnect to this and completely do everything.
That's what I'm here for, DOS, to mumble on about space while you fix the stream.
Teamwork. For now, y'all might have lost the preview, but we're not showing other images or anything like that, so don't worry about it. I didn't restart that system.
Gotcha.
Some super Thomas, thank you so much for holding it down there while I was troubleshooting the issue. Gabor, here's one. This is a $10 super chat. Appreciate you, Gabor. Could you protect Starship passengers by radiation by bundling them into 9 packs? 9 packs with the middle one being crewed.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Hold on, bundling the spacecraft together, like having a bunch.
Using spacecraft as radiation shielding for other spacecraft, I think, is the idea.
So if the starships like dock to one another in some way, to the point where all the crew lived in like one starship, and then you kind of wrapped the other 8 around with no people on board, I guess in theory that would work. I don't think that's the current plan. I think Elon has mentioned in his sort of Starship presentations that there's going to be a radiation shelter on board.
Right.
That's kind of in the middle of the spacecraft, surrounded by a bunch of other material, and that will be used for if a solar storm is detected and they need to have an increased level of radiation for a short amount of time. The crew on board can go into that space of the spacecraft for a little bit, wait for the storm to pass, and then go back to the rest of the ship.
Yep, sort of like getting in your bathtub when the tornado's coming through instead of like being in your living room. You could live in your living room all the rest of the time, but when a tornado comes through, you hop in the bathtub. I mean,
for more passive protection, like just during the normal coast phase, I think the plan is to kind of point the spacecraft tail on, because remember, you'll have the engine section and the fuel tanks, and then the payload goes in the nose cone. So if you point the tail end with all the fuel tanks towards the sun, which is the most predominant source of radiation during this case, you'll have all of that material to absorb a bunch of radiation, and thus the payload compartment won't be as exposed. So I think that is the general plan, with a shelter on board for more severe space weather events.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it turns out, or it ends up being that in the same way that in the early days of spaceflight, it was like, oh, what about the radiation belts? It's too dangerous. Oh no.
Right.
We could experience a similar kind of thing where it ends up being an issue, yes, and something we need to take into account, but perhaps more manageable than needing an entire spacecraft surrounded in a giant bubble of water or heavy lead shielding or something in order to make it workable. But we will find out.
Gotcha. 2 new memberships as well. Gabor, thank you so much for the membership. And then Strider, I actually can't read that one, but Strider. I'm going to go with Strider. Thank you, Strider, for the membership there as well. Let's grab some more questions and continue on with Max Q. Got a couple minutes left. Let's see. Wow, I'm trying to find some that we won't talk for 20 minutes about. We talk for 20 minutes about everything that we bring up.
It's true.
Geez, here's one. This one's from Jade about James Webb, trying to spread it around a little bit. Did they build mechanical attachment points to James Webb Space Telescope for possible on-orbit fixes? And I can actually answer that one because I had one of the engineers from James Webb on my show over on Twitch last month with the Intrepid Museum events that I do. But they do not have any specific plans for on-orbit servicing, but they have worked with on-orbit servicing providers to make changes to James Webb such that it will be easier to service on orbit if they ever decide to go there. So there's not like a specific fixture that's designed to refuel James Webb or anything like that, but they've talked with some of these companies like, hey, if you move that strut over this way, when we need to get to this, we might be able to get to it if we need to. Not that we're designing it that way, because that may delay it.
Right.
Just toss that out there.
So is that talking about like these companies that have little satellite buses with robotic arms and things like that can remotely service spacecraft? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that sort of thing, like the Northrop Grumman system that can actually, it literally takes like an injector and it puts it up the engine bell of the other spacecraft and can refill a fuel tank like the back way, depending on the type of engine, yada, 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 right? There's a couple different designs where they can grapple to it or they can just add another engine, another fuel tank to it. You've probably done that in Kerbal before, right? There's a couple different designs like that to increase the lifespan. But James Webb, I know from talking with the engineer last month, doesn't have any specific plans for on-orbit servicing, but they have sort of thought about things like, wow, if we don't put this here, then if we ever need to get to that, we'd actually be able to access it instead of having to rip a panel off or whatever.
Right.
So that's that one. That's a really good question. I'm going to try to grab a couple more here. Always so many questions. Are there thrusters on SN5, or will it rely only on the Raptor to provide maneuverability? Do we have any thrusters we've seen?
We've seen some RCS thrusters on it. So it definitely has thrusters. I'm excited. It's one of those things that'll kind of tip their hand. When we start seeing thruster tests, it'll be ready to fly. You'll know. That'll be a good indicator. A hop will be about to happen is when they start doing thruster tests. Because with Hopper, before the 20 meter and before the 150 meter, they were doing all kinds of RCS tests, and it just like sounds like a really loud rushing air sound. So we have not seen SN5 do any of those tests yet, but we have seen the thrusters on it. So that'll be an interesting milestone to look for ahead of the hop on SN5.
Now, hopefully, once we get some live streams going from Boca Chica, our new ambient audio. Remember, one of the things we said we would be improving with the Boca Chica streams, we've got some microphones and stuff set up now that are placed away from Mary's position, and we've been testing that ambient audio so you hear construction equipment backing up and then birds chirping a lot of the time. So hopefully we can hear those thruster firings on the live streams that are going to be coming up hopefully this week, right? If they start testing thrusters this week.
Hopefully.
Probably have time for one more questions. Oh my gosh. Sure. Really quickly, James Falcon, are there any of the Mars missions this year on Falcon 9? Falcon 9, does it have any Mars missions slated this year?
Not this year, no. So the 3 missions launching this year, one is launching on a Japanese rocket, the Emirati mission on an H-2A. The Chinese are launching their spacecraft on their own Long March 5 rocket, and then NASA's Perseverance rover is launching on a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket. The only mission to Mars currently slated for a Falcon vehicle is actually the Psyche mission to an asteroid, which will conduct a Mars flyby on its way, which is launching on a Falcon Heavy in 2022, I think.
Okay. Currently scheduled?
Yeah, I believe that is the current launch date, yes.
Gotcha. And I'm just like speed running a couple questions here. As always, there's so many questions. We're nerds and we get off into the weeds on one single question. It's not like, all right, 30 seconds to answer, go. Right. Let's see. Here is wow, a lot of James Webb's ones in here. Do we know a root cause for the Electron failure? Have we heard anything else about Electron officially from Rocket Lab?
The latest we heard is that the investigation is proceeding well, and that CEO Peter Beck is very proud of the team with the progress they've made. But they have not announced any results from the investigation or anything yet. We're still waiting for that.
Gotcha. There's so many other questions in here. There's a ton of questions about James Webb, something about commercialization of spaceflight, but I think we're going to have to go ahead and call it here today when it comes to questions. So
if you have more questions, please feel free to send them on Twitter or social media. You can see our handles for us 3 down below. There's also at NASASpaceflight. If you have other questions, please send them to us on Twitter. We will do our best to answer them there if we did not have time to answer them today.
Yep, absolutely. We always run out of time because we get off in the weeds and then we watch one video for 5 minutes and then this guy keeps running his mouth in between questions. Like, dude, if you would shut up, there would be more time to answer questions, right? But anyways, folks, thank you all so much for joining us today over here at NASA Spaceflight Live. Thomas Burghardt right here above me. Thank you so much, Thomas. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
All righty. And then up at the top, Jack, thank you for dialing in and chatting with us today.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Can we hear Jack? Y'all heard Jack, right? Chat, tell me you heard Jack. Please tell me you heard Jack.
Oh, God.
No, you're good. You're good. I can see the bar jumping. That looks like it's taken care of. And Jack speaks. Yes, Jack speaks. And then I'm John Galloway. If you watch my Twitch stream, you may know me as Das from the Kerbal Space Academy. But I'm the guy who is to blame when you can't hear Jack. And slowly but surely, we're trying to dial this in every week. We probably need to spend some more time in between practicing things, like get people dialed in and stuff. But
I mean, I think we've done NSF Live, at least I have, 3 or 4 times so far, and we haven't had this many technical issues with my setup yet. So
oh no, I don't think it was your setup. This time it was my connection to the server hiccuped, and when it came back, the server couldn't hear you anymore because you had to go to Discord and we couldn't use you on the main feed. So it was something with the server hiccup that happened. I don't know if it was the internet and the lightning around here or what the deal was, but we got it figured out. You're blaming DOS. You should be blaming DOS because it is.
Yeah, no, really, no worries. All I was trying to say is it worked out, you know.
It always works out at the end. And chat, thank you all so much for bearing with us. Again, this isn't all pre-produced content. It's not like an edited video. We literally just turn on the stream. We look at some pictures. We talk about what's going on. But this is sort of more of a space nerds hang out on the couch together, geeking about whatever's going on this month or week or whatever, more than it is and now welcome to the news broadcast where we will talk about the space things or whatever. Anyways, one more time, look, there's another membership from Josher. Josher, thank you for the membership there right at the end. Also, thanks so much to everyone else who supports us in doing this. Let me pop over to here real quick. There we go. If you're a launch director or a flight engineer membership level here at the NASASpaceflight YouTube channel, you get your name on the end of the stream. So flight engineers, that's the highest you can get. Aces down, Richard Egert, Wesley Evans, thank y'all so much for the support at that tippity top tier. And then all of the launch directors as well. We're almost getting to the point where I can't even read them. There's so many, but launch directors, thank you so much for your support too. Let's pop over this way. Did I miss anything else, y'all? Follow the channel. Thanks for the support. Videos from Boca Chica every day.
Check out our store. I don't know. I guess what else can we plug?
I think that's about it. Oh. Also, the broadcasts take a lot of work from a lot of different people, getting together links, getting together all the pictures, people moderating the chat and stuff like that comes through. And then the people that are actually out in the field taking pictures, like Mary, Boca Chica gal, who gets us all those cool content from Boca Chica proper. So I think we've got that over here. Let me pop over to that screen and just see. Yes, we are on this screen as well. So this week's NSF Live was brought to you. That's me right there, John Das Galloway. Subject matter experts, Thomas Burghardt and Jack Beyer. Visuals, that's Jack and Brady. And then production, hey, always on the back end. Thank you, Michael Baylor, so much for everything you do behind the scenes. And then Ian Atkinson bringing a lot of those resources together so that we can present them every week. But now I think that I've got everything. Like I said, if you're looking to catch up with what's going on this week, testing out at Boca Chica, launches that may happen, follow the channel, turn on the notifications, the little bell. If you tell it to notify you every single time something happens, video uploads, it'll make your phone go beep or whatever. We go live to show you something at Boca Chica, it'll go bingly, bingly, boop. There's a launch happening or something like that, something good, a little notifier goes off. So that's on you if you want to never miss a beat what happens here on the channel. Ring the bell or whatever and set the notifications on so you can catch up with this. Yes, do like and subscribe. There you go. Thank you, NASASpaceflight proper over there. One last super chat, Bent Straight. Thanks, guys. Y'all just keep getting better. We're trying, Bent Straight. One day we'll settle into the groove and keep on going. But that is going to do it for NASASpaceflight this week. Thanks for showing up. We'll see you nerds next week and over the course of this week. Everybody wave and I'll change over to the outro video.
See you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Later, nerds.
Pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll with Planet.
Water towers, fly!
Flight outside of speed off.
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.